Yep.
Hey guys, welcome to episode 14 of The Complete Game with Kurt Schilling and Garrick Schilling. What's up, G?
What's going on, everybody?
How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing all right.
Good. Mother's Day weekend coming up. I said on Tuesday I was going to talk about Aaron Judge tonight, and I basically spent a day as if I was going to pitch to Aaron Judge in my next start. So a lot of what you'll see here is Um, it's more top level stuff, but there's a lot of detail in it that of statistics and things that I looked at when I was facing a hitter that mattered to me. The challenge is that we'll go back to that strike zone and I'll show you some different numbers in the strike zone, but it's an all-encompassing thing rather than into detail. But what I mean by that is you'll see this is the strike zone, and these are his averages inside the strike. So this was May 4th from a heat map on May 4th. The blue is good for you, the pitcher. Purple is okay, and black is no go. Um, as I said the other day, one of the big problems with something like this generic is that this is everything, all pitches in all quadrants, curveball, fastball, like 88, 98, whatever. Um, but it's a good place to start. All right. And, when I was looking at a hitter, I spoke often about not really worrying about some of the statistics that traditional people cared about. So let me just preface it.
Well, hang on. Do you
Go ahead.
want to do Rafael Devers before you dive deep into
We can
Aaron
do
Judge?
Rafael Devers first.
Okay. I think we should talk
Tee
about
it
the
up.
Rafael Devers news.
Yep. Which is
Tristan Cassis was obviously injured. And the
out for the
first
year.
first out for the year. First base is now open and vacant in Boston. And the team asked if he would be interested in playing first base.
Because currently they have a platoon with two young guys that are not Rafael Devers,
And they in spring went out and got Alex Bregman, and it was a known controversy heading into the year that
which we talked about. Should have
they
never happened. Should have been
they
avoided.
yeah, absolutely. And they moved off. He moved off. He agreed to play DH and is now very vocally upset in the media about being even asked, it feels like, to play first base.
Offended.
Yeah.
Um, So I'm immediately, I'm going to use words that are going to sound hyperbolic. I'm like appalled, offended. Like he's got a long-term deal, so you're stuck with him, Boston. So there's nothing you can do about it. But this is when we talk about the modern player. This player existed in all generations, but I think it's much more prevalent now. The I, me, me. Now listen, I read a couple quotes, right? One of them was, Craig Breslow played baseball. He should know how hard it is. No one said it was going to be easy. No one claimed it was going to be easy. And you got to imagine they went through a lot of iterations of conversation around even asking him after they went through all the stuff early in the year. But this is, and again, I've traditionally tried to stay away from back when I played and all that other stuff. But because
But like you said, Devers brought that up himself, talking about Craig Breslow.
right.
And the quote was, he played ball, being who he's talking about. And I would like to think that he knows that changing positions isn't easy. He also said, I know I'm a ball player, but at the same time, they can't expect me to play every single position out there.
Right.
I
Which
mean,
fair enough.
it's also,
Right.
I think he said something else about like if someone got hurt in the outfield because he's playing
Right.
first.
They're gonna
It's
ask me to
like,
go out there.
it's and again, I have nothing to speak on it, but the way that you keep coming up with excuses it is like the worrier, the Karen of the group type situation where you're making excuses for what is ultimately you just don't want to play first base, which if you're gonna go out there and say like it's my body, like I've had injury, he was on the injured list 4 different times last year and I think 3 different times in 2023. So if that's your reasoning and you're standing by that as a
But that was nowhere in the conversation.
yeah, that's not what he's talking about. He's talking
He
about
was never talking.
hypotheticals and making excuses, which that's where it comes across as what you're talking about
Right.
and why you can speak hyperbolically on it because it is so dramatic.
So yeah, his whole protest against this was it's going to be hard for me and I don't want to do it. And again, obviously a supremely talented player. who got off to probably what will be the worst start of his career. He's bounced back. He's going to be back. His numbers will be where they're supposed to be at the end of the year. Having said that, this is one of those things that if you have that guy in the club, if you have a David Ortiz in the clubhouse, this conversation probably never gets public because he calls him inside and says, "Hey, listen, this sucks. I know it. We're blah 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 blah. But let's just if you're gonna have your issues, have it with the people you have it with behind the scenes, because the Boston media eats this stuff up, and they're in heaven now because they've got a story every day. Because
Oh, I
now,
mean, you drove around there for how long listening to those radios? This will
yeah,
be
yep,
for
they're
the next
loving
week.
this.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so. Now what you've done is you put your teammates in a nightmare situation because I'm not going to talk about it. Okay, well, let me go ask this guy about it. Let me go ask Alex Bregman about it. Let me go ask anybody else on the roster about it. And you're answering questions or dealing with things you don't want to deal with those. Um, so clearly, I think the team, and I think I might agree. Well, his other response was, I told them they need to go out and look at the market and find a player.
I was going to ask what you thought about that. If you could remove that statement from this situation from a perspective of a player goes down, say your time on the Red Sox, somebody major goes down and there isn't a situation where you just ask the guy to move out of playing a position to now like, okay, maybe you could play first, instead because it isn't they're not asking him to play outfield
No,
in
but
that
it's still a
dramatic.
tough position to play.
Exactly, but they're not asking him to take a position like third base and move to outfield,
Right,
which is vastly different from a
right,
corner of the infield.
right.
So I just think that that's the dramatic part of it is where you lose the art. But what I was asking is, do you think it's fair to, like I said, remove from the dramatic parts of these comments, ask for your GM, coach, manager, obviously not in a public
I
setting.
did it.
Yeah, exactly.
I did
That
it.
that
I
part I feel like is fair to be
right.
like,
No, I have
please,
no problem. That's not something you say publicly because basically
e-
you're
e-
throwing your GM under the bus.
exactly.
I was always the guy who spoke up in Philadelphia a lot about it's the deadline. Do something. Go get a player. Oh, we're a small market. No, we're not a small market. And I was in a position, and he is too. They're not going to bench him. They're not going to trade him, right? But picture this conversation with Mookie Betts, who, by the way, has played second base, shortstop, and center field. Picture this with Freddie Freeman, although he's left-handed. You think Freddie Freeman would say boo? He there's a lot again, this is a young player who's I think immature about a situation. And I get it. Like I get it. All of the things he said, he didn't need to say publicly because there is not one positive thing that can come out of this. None. Not one.
It's
And
emotional.
right. And again, that's fine. I don't blame. I guess I wouldn't react that way, but that doesn't mean I'd react the right way. Lord knows I created enough, bullshit controversy with stuff that didn't matter. But it all came back on me. And for the most part, when it didn't, I learned my lesson and didn't do it again. But I was always okay dealing with that because I knew what was in my heart and I knew I was trying to do what was best for the team. As a starting pitcher, I can be selfish in a sense, and because if I pitch well, we win. You know, Rafael Devers, who was by no means Ozzie Smith at third base, you got a guy coming, Alex Bregman, who comes in, who's a far better defender, Gold Glove caliber defender. I like the guys who would have gone like, and you've got a players manager in Alex Cora, right? I play with a lot of guys who would have gone to Alex and said, "Hey, dude, if you want me to move to first to get this guy on our roster, I'm
I
good."
mean, it's A-Rod and Jeter.
Right,
It's the most classic
right,
example of it.
right,
I mean, at least that my age group would know,
right.
like off the top.
And but again, I played with guys, and in certain situations, and I was in a couple situations where I said. I could probably make a little more money, but if not making more money means you're going to spend that money on another player to make us better, I'm okay with that. And Tom Brady did it in New England. and restructures. There's
Well,
that.
that's also where I kept thinking, like, I grew up in New England. This is the type of thing that Bill Belichick would cut you for.
It would
Like,
never happen. He would, yeah, right,
if you're not Tom Brady
right.
or, someone
Well,
of
and the
that
problem
caliber
is give me a star player during the time, like an uncuttable star player,
for
other than Brady for the Patriots.
Teddy Bruschi,
Teddy,
Julian
This
Edelman,
is
Randy
this
Moss.
is a Teddy Bruschi level caliber type talent with a guaranteed contract that's going nowhere,
Yeah, that's the
right? But
difference.
Bill Belichick didn't put those people on his team,
He would try them out and cut them. That's
right?
that's
But I'm
what I
saying
mean. Like
when
that's the
you're
type of attitude that he would not allow
and I
around
don't.
his guys because you can't have a buy-in from 25 guys with a guy who's thinking about himself like that.
The problem is that
In my mind.
the baseball season is too long, and karma is always a part of the game. And I can remember. I'll give you an example. Uh, and this goes back to what I talk about. And you and I have talked about this. I talk about managers and what their job actually is today. It's not hit and run. It's not moving a guy over. Sure, it's managing the bullpen to some degree, the pitching coach. This is about managing 25 human beings and knowing your players, which is why the Bregman stuff coming over should have never happened. It should have been done behind closed scenes. Alex Cora is that kind of guy. You can go to Alex, and Alex is going to be a guy that's going to be like, you know what? Let's talk about it. This is a nightmare. Not a nightmare because he'll manage it, but you're in a different market. This is if this happened in Colorado, that wouldn't even have been on the webpage. Wouldn't even be news. No one cares. This happens in Boston. I don't care where the Red Sox are in the standings. It's on the front page of the Globe, and WEI is talking about it around the clock.
Or we were talking about Devin Williams last
Yeah,
episode. Like if you're playing in Milwaukee, this isn't a big deal. But if you're playing in New York, it's a monster
right.
story.
I think it's an incredibly selfish response. I don't know the kid. I assume he's a great kid. Most guys but and I say kid, he's what, 26, I think.
Yeah,
Um,
I think he's
yeah.
27.
So he's not a kid. He's a man. But there's also one of the things we don't talk a lot about because of all the lightning rod tendencies is the cultures. Latin players are from a different culture. And getting off the island, so to speak, is 90% of the young male athlete goals in the Dominican Republic, in Puerto Rico, and all the things that go there. They get over here, and now he went from playing in the Dominican and being, 16-year-old superstar prospect to a couple hundred million in the bank. There's a lot that goes with that. And I'm not saying that in a negative way. It's a lot to adjust to. Like I said, if he was in Arizona or Tampa, we wouldn't even hear about it. No one would care.
Yeah. I as a fan of Rafi, I don't have a problem with him not wanting to play
Right.
first. It is more so with in the way I read in the two articles that I read, the way the quotes are broken up, it seems like he said something about it more than once as he was frustrated. And it's just a younger, more like, what are you doing here? Like, this is only going to be, like you're
Right.
saying, a negative in
Well,
this
I guess my biggest
very tight AL East and something that's not about what we're here to do.
there's a self-righteous piece to this that bothers me.
Yeah.
Like, who are you to ask me to change positions? When, the positive guy in me is saying, listen, they think so much of you that you're that good that
That
they
you
think,
could do it.
right,
Yeah.
right,
That's the way you look at it if you have that mentality
right.
about it.
Because now you backed yourself into a corner. You can't do it because you said you weren't going to move out of third base.
And that's what I was saying before about the if you're saying like I've spent time on the injured list, I wanted to play third base. You pushed me into this DH role, said you wouldn't ask me to play
I
anything
struggled
else.
my ass off, but I found my place. I'm comfortable doing it.
I
That's a
I
small thing, by the way.
struggled at the start of the season. I've just now gotten comfortable, and you want me to go to if you made a coherent and was like, I'm not about to break up this rhythm I've gotten
Right.
into sort of argument,
Totally
then
valid
no
argument.
problem with it.
I've
But
I've got
it's an
my yeah.
immature way of approaching it that bothers me.
I've got my head around what it means to be a DH now. It's very mentally different for me, but I now can situate myself where my forward because
Which it sounds ridiculous to
no,
say,
no,
like
no.
you're only just hitting,
I
but
was just gonna say the depth of the DH part is something people don't understand. It's an incredibly hard job to
one of
sit.
those things that I even got when I was sitting in the locker room during games, David would come in and sit and watch every at bat meticulously at times,
Yeah,
like a psycho. It
yeah,
was
right.
crazy. When you're a young kid, you don't understand the
The mental
amount
game,
of details
the
that go
mental game.
into
Yeah.
what 500 plate
Think
appearances a
about this:
year. Like
4 hour game, you might be active for 10 minutes.
if you do a great job,
Four at bats over
if you do a
four.
great
Right,
job.
right. Four at bats for over 4 hours, or let's say 3 hours. Four at bats spaced out in 4 3 minute intervals against guys throwing 98.
Worst case scenario, you strike out twice and pop out on two first pitches, and you have 30 seconds of actual swinging work
And then 24 hours until you get the
to
next at
sit
bat.
on that.
Right, right.
It's like, yeah,
It's
we've
an
talked a lot about the
incredibly
mental part of it.
mentally challenging job to do. Not just to do, it's incredibly hard to be good at it.
Yeah.
And that was what I marveled about David doing. And it's why Manny didn't do it very much.
And it's why if he said something like that, I would have no problem with it.
Right. Right. And that's exactly what I was. If he gave me a baseball argument and said those things about being, yeah, okay, I get it. But none of that was part of the conversation. This is completely from my perspective. No, I don't want to do this. You can't make me with no logical argument behind it, other than they're making me move again.
Yeah. Comes
And
across selfish.
what's more important to him? His team success? Because I would argue that I guess what I'm looking at is from the other perspective. If I move him to first base, who's my DH? Is my offense generally better? Because I don't look at him as being, I'm going to move over to first. He's going to be a magnet and play like Dov Mankiewicz or Mark Grace. And maybe he will. I don't know. But is my lineup better with him at first base? I think they think so because they're talking about doing it. And I'm confident enough and been around the game enough to know there were a lot of conversations that happened before this one. And somebody said, Craig ultimately decided, yeah, you know what? This is a conversation I want to have. And it backfired. So, now interesting. Well, and I'm going to be curious to see how it plays out.
I just wanted to bring that up with you because it was when I first read about it, I was kind of more on Rafi's side,
Right.
thinking back to the spring. But yeah, reading more and more and seeing more of his quotes, it was
Right.
harder and harder to stick
There's
up for him.
there's
Because
little,
I love him. I love Rafael
yeah,
Devers.
he's a phenomenal talent. There's a little LeBron James feel to it, is what I got. I mean, but anyway. So back to the board. So this chart, so this and I'll break out my notebook at some point in the future and show you what it looked like and how I wrote it out. But there's a lot of numbers on this that would go into me putting my notes together. And there was a caliber of player in the big leagues. For me, it was Barry Bonds. He was the only one at the time. But where in pitchers meetings, I would literally tell other pitchers on the staff in the meeting, excuse me, if you don't throw 95 and can't command your fastball, don't pitch to him. Don't pitch around him. Don't nibble. Put him on. And we're kind of there with Judge. Again, look at the numbers. So blue is good for you. Black is good for him. This was a May 4th heat map out of a game, and I'm assuming this is a composite of the season. But he's on this side of the plate, so this is down and away, right? This is down and away. Let me get my pen. This is down and away. And here's the thing about velocity. This box right here at 250 and 235, fastball down and away is the best pitch. But this box right here, if I throw 97, is this big. If I throw 90, this box is this big. If I throw under 90, this box is this big.
And if you're not watching on YouTube, what's happening is the bottom left part of the strike zone, right?
Right.
You're just making smaller and
It's getting
smaller
smaller
margins of
and
error.
smaller and smaller. And by the way, on his worst day, he's still hitting 235 in the lower middle portion of
Yeah,
the
like
strike
those
zone.
blue parts are most guys purple
Right.
or
Right. And there's a purple up here. He only hits 300 on that pitch. But one of the things that might be surprising, and again, you've got the hitter on this side of the plate. You're talking about a guy that's 6'7". So you would think, oh my God, I can jam him in because he's got long arms. So I learned this with Richie Sexton and Adam Dunn and a bunch of guys that were 6'6", 6'7", 6'8". I thought, just like little guys. Oh, I can get little guys away. I can get big guys in. Big guys don't get to the big leagues as hitters if they can't pull their hands inside a baseball, right? In the minor leagues, if you're 6'7", you can't hit the ball in, you don't hit because everybody's pounding you in. And when you're 6'7", your inside corner is probably 2 boxes wide or a box and a half. But look at the numbers on the ball up in innings at 444, middle innings at 417, and he's the rare right-handed low ball hitter.
I was just about to interject and try to ask, like, is there any other guy you can think of that
Phil
was like
Nevin
that?
was the only
Who?
good right-handed low ball hitter I think I ever faced.
Who was that?
Phil Nevin, #1 pick of the Houston Astros, played his career in the Padres, coaching for the Angels. He was a big boy and a phenomenal right hand because this is left-handed
I was gonna say if
passive
you
zone.
flip that, it's
Right,
a left-handed
right,
batter.
exactly right. And on the ball down in the zone, he's hitting 600. Again, I'm not sure how much composite this is, but this would be the heat map I would look at, and I would be looking at it for power velocity. So my first so and there's not a lot of complication to the numbers once you break them down, but there's some pretty important stuff here. And so for me, my first thought is, okay, I'm going to look at there's a couple numbers on this. So when the pitcher's ahead in the count, Aaron Judge is hitting 204, slugging 211, or on base 211, slugging 400. His OPS is 611. He has 61 homers career wise. When the batter's ahead, he's hitting 347 with a 589 on base percentage and a 788 slugging percentage, which is an OPS of 1377. So that tells you, which we all know, get ahead in the count. Now, the problem with that is on the first pitch of the at bat, Aaron Judge has put the ball in play 430 times in his career on the first pitch. He's hitting 430 with a 432 and an 854 slugging percentage for an OPS of 1286. 430 at bats, he has 51 homers and 109 RBIs. So I was always looking for where can I start you? Down and away. Well, that looks good, but I have to be cognizant of the fact that he might be getting aggressive on that ball. And more importantly now, on the road, where I don't know that I put it on here. I didn't. But on the road, he's a 287 hitter, and at home, he's like a 340 hitter, which means at home, he's very comfortable shooting the ball to right field because of the short porch. So that might work in Milwaukee when he's on the road, but probably that number looks a little different in New York. So now I'm thinking, okay, where am I'm generally going to try and go down and away. The problem is going to be that he's good enough that I'm not going to be able to do that for 4 at bats. So is he looking middle in down early? I need to know in the counts where he's at. And we talked about the 1-1 pitch, right? I was talking about the importance of the 1-1 pitch. Everybody talks about, oh, first pitch strikes, first pitch strikes. Well, ahead and behind, he tells you, yeah, it's important to get ahead of him. But on the 1-1 count, in the big leagues, it's the most dramatic offensive swing from 2 balls and 1 strike to 1 ball and 2 strikes, right? When you're 1-1 and you go to 2-1 on him, he hits 495 with a 493 on base percentage and a 1052 OPS for 1545. When you're 1-1 and you throw a strike, he hits 182 with a 186 on base percentage and a 346 slugging, a difference of over 1,000 in his OPS. Now, all of this is prefaced with stuff. You don't do this at 89, 90. And I would argue there's probably very few guys below 95 that could comfortably pitch around and pitch to him and be comfortable getting him out. But there's another interesting stat here. So clearly when you're 1-1, you're talking about Babe Ruth juiced, and I say that metaphorically. And 1-2, you're talking about worse than Mario Mendoza. Two completely different, and which makes sense because most hitters are going to have that swing. But that's again, that's Barry Bonds to some scrub. And so that becomes, and you to get when you're at 1-1, you look at this and you have to factor in how did I get to 1-1, what side of the plate, what pitch selection. So here's two numbers I thought were just fascinating. He's a 506 hitter in 2-0 counts. Now, most guys are in 2-0 counts are for something, they're nasty. He's hitting over 500 in 2-0 counts, not 390, not 401, 506.
He's flipping a coin for a hit
It's ridiculous.
in a 2-0 count.
But here's where when I go down inside the numbers and I'm looking at how to pitch a guy, on 3-2 counts, Aaron Judge is hitting 226. But he has a 504 on base percentage. which tells me that if I'm going to get him to chase, it generally is not going to be 3-2.
What
So,
tells you that from a 504 on base percentage?
which tells me he doesn't chase his 504 on base percentage at 3-2 means he's walking or getting a hit over half the time he's in 3-2 counts,
Okay.
right? And his 226 average tells me that when he makes contact, he's not doing a whole lot. So that leads me to he's walking much more.
He's not swinging.
Right,
Okay.
right.
Gotcha. Yeah.
For a guy that strikes out 170 to 200 times a year, that's a pretty amazing number. Um, but when you look at here's the other piece. When we get back to first pitches, right? Talk about first pitch strikes. After 1-0 counts, he's hitting 323 with a 506 on base percentage and a 712 slugging. If you get strike one, he's hitting 238 with a 317 and a 480. Again, over almost 500 different points. The scary part is he's got 154 home runs after 1-0 counts, and he's got 122 after 0-1 counts. Right. So that becomes now I'm factoring in parks. Where am I pitching to him? If I'm pitching to him in Fenway, I've seen him, he'll hit a lot of balls off the end of the bat in Yankee Stadium that'll go first, second row. Those are just routine flyouts in Fenway. So you'll factor in the ballpark. Um, but again, you're talking about 143 points in batting average when the pitcher's ahead in the count, he's 204, 211, 400. That's worse than pedestrian numbers. That's right. 01, 12, 02, yada yada. His OPS is 611, 61 homers. When the batter's ahead, he's at 347. His on-base percentage is 589. That's Bonzian. Slugging 788 for a 1377 OPS, 150 homers. None of those are surprising. The degree at which they are different is surprising. How big they are, right? Again, batters ahead will generally be, they'll hit 300, 305, 298, 347. That's winning a batting title. Here's another real cool number. When he has a three ball count, he's a 259 hitter with a 624 on base percentage, which goes back to he's comfortable taking a 3-0 or 3-1 or 3-2. He's getting on base over 60% of the time when he gets to a three ball count. So when you're to get him to chase in three ball counts and to get him to chase in 3-2 counts, you got to be a power arm. You got to have the power slider. You got to be able to get into this part of the zone. Not here, here. Or you got to be able to get a split in the middle that goes down out of the zone. Comfortable inside. The only time I might look to freeze him up in is when I pitched him away for 2 or 3 at bats in a game, because I need to shock him when I go in there and I can't miss. So here's another, and we were just talking about this earlier. By the way, there's no split advantage. Righties, lefties, he murders both.
Can I ask you a quick question about,
Yeah.
so this is all about prepping to pitch
Right.
against Aaron Judge,
Right.
correct? How much of each individual preparation when you're facing a guy like when you're on the Red Sox against the Yankees comes with like the chess match that is the long season? Like I'm gonna not only face him 3 times, 4 times today.
I'm going to face him 25 times this year.
Yeah. How much of that are you taking into account with not only just every individual at bat, but throughout games?
Depends on the hitter. With him,
Someone like him, though.
I'm trying to survive each at bat.
Okay.
I
Yeah.
really am.
Scenario to scenario, like you're
Right,
saying with
right,
Bonds. Like sometimes you can't intentionally walk him, but
But
okay.
I'm arguing that you have to have the right pitchers. One of the things, and we were just talking about this, the league average generally is right around 300 for batting average on, it's called BABIP, which I hate. It's batting average on balls in play. Aaron Judge's career batting average on balls in play is 350, which tells you that his exit velocity, another term I can't stand, but how hard he hits the ball is significant, and he's in the upper percentage, if not the upper 1%. So he doesn't make soft contact. So you're trying to make sure that you miss his barrel. Now, one of the fascinating things for me is you get all these numbers together, and then you go and take a look at Aaron Judge in the postseason.
It's again like what we were talking about with Devin Williams being in New York.
Yes.
Bright lights.
Aaron Judge in the postseason is a career 205 hitter with a 318 on base percentage and a 450 slugging percentage. In 58 games, he has 16 homers and 34 RBIs. You don't face 4s and 5s in October, starters. You don't see the middle of the bullpen. The guys who try to make this pitch and then throwing this pitch. The guys who try to throw this pitch and end up throwing this pitch. These guys, you're facing the Scoobles who is going to live in this box at upper 90s, throw the power ball down in the zone, right? All your relievers are the mid to upper 90s guys. But it's why it's so hard to watch postseason pitching with so many throwers. If you're a thrower, Aaron Judge is going to kill you. If you can't command your fastball, hang with them. And as you go into a series, and the challenge is, by the way, 118 home runs career with 2 strikes. Career, this is, by the way, 2,600 plate appearances have ended with 2 strikes. He's a 192 hitter, but with 2 strikes in his career, he has a 302 on base percentage. That's ridiculous. So, you hear me say this, and I've said it before. You give me a guy that strikes out 100 times during the season, he's not going to hit me in October because I can exploit his holes. And those numbers, those postseason numbers tell me that. It's not the pressure, it's not the bright lights. It's every night you're facing a one,
Yeah.
right? And so I guess my approach is going to be using that down and away early to get him on it. And again, if I'm in Yankee Stadium, I think I had very few intentional base on balls in my career, but I had a lot of pitch arounds because I can command the ball. If you're a pitching, like as a pitching coach, what you have to know is I can't, there's 9 guys on my staff. I can't tell them to pitch around them because they don't have the command to do it. They're the guy that, the catcher sets up 2 feet off the plate outside and he throws a cock shot and it's 1-0, right? You have to be able to pitch around. If you're going to pitch around him with pitches, you have to be able to nibble and move around the zone. And it gets down to the ballpark, the situation. There might be a situation, you know, in late in the game, say, and it's Yankee Stadium, and we're winning 9-0. I'll feed him a pitch, maybe nobody on, 1 out. I'll give him that fastball in one of those sweet zones where, okay, now he goes back and he's going to be looking for it. I'll get it again. I'll wait to get it again, and you're never going to get it again. But you have to have that, like we talked about, that command to do that. And so, I would tell you if you're approaching pitching as a staff, um, if your power arms can't pitch to them, you just can't. I think you're going to start seeing more intentional walks because what you need to have happen, and it's one of the reasons why Goldschmidt hitting so well has been huge for them because he's in his 330, 340. He's doing damage. So, but nobody's going to do the damage consistently Aaron Judge is going to do. Runners and score position, put him on. Now, the other problem is he's not a clogger. He can run. He's got 50-some career stolen bases. He
Yeah.
knows how to run. Smart base runner. All of this, to me, made monumentally insane by just how big he is.
Yeah. He's a monster. Freak.
Him,
Mutant.
Dela Cruz,
Yeah,
right?
Ellie De La Cruz, monster.
O'Neill
O'Neal
Cruz as
Cruz.
well.
Yeah.
This Cal Ripken was a freak in that sense, right? 6'4" shortstop. What?
I remember when Mike Trout came into the MLB, it was like, look at this guy, he's a specimen.
Yeah.
He looked short next to those guys.
Yeah, yeah. But it's so hard for those guys because of the size of the
Yeah.
zone they have to manage. And it's why they're going to be guys that'll be high strikeout numbers. But God forbid he ever gets a Pete Alonso approach now and just says, you know what, I'll stay back and not swing for the because he doesn't have to swing for the fences to go deep. He can, he hit a home run the other night down the right field line. I thought he crushed it and he hit it off the end of the bat and it was 2 rows back in that stadium. And that's why his number, you got to adjust where you're pitching to him, what park it's at, and you're going to have to pitch him to the fat part of the field, and you're going to have to do it without barrel contact. And he gets the barrel of the bat to the ball so easily in so many situations where a guy like that big shouldn't.
Yeah. The postseason numbers you were talking about for a second, do you think, I mean, obviously it's early in his career, but that type of thing, like, when did he get drafted?
Well,
20.
he's got 54 playoff games under his belt.
Yeah, but he's what, 8 years, 7 years,
Probably 7.
7 years, somewhere around there. Anyways, but at what point when you're going to the postseason, you said 50 something games and you haven't really had that success yet, does that start to become a narrative in your own mind? Because he's obviously one of, if not the best player in baseball at any given time of the year, except October.
He's got 10 years in the big leagues.
Oh, 10 years.
10 years,
Wow.
but 1, 2, two of them were 20 some games, but
Okay, yeah, yeah.
his big league debut was 2016.
But yeah, in either case, that's such a. I mean, it's kind of a hard question to ask you, I guess. But when you're in a place like that, like it's not even just like getting out of a funk or a slump. It's like,
Well, it goes back to the Devers thing. If he was doing this in Milwaukee, it wouldn't be a big story. But it's the storyline when they go to the playoffs. Is Aaron Judge going to show up? And that their lineup with Rice and Grisham having a monster year and Goldschmidt being, and I called the Goldschmidt thing. I absolutely bought into knowing the kind of guy he is. You put a former MVP that everybody's
I
saying,
love him.
oh, that well, everybody's saying on the downside, on the backside, can't do it anymore. And this is what you're going to get. I don't think he's a 340 hitter, but I think he's going to end up with at 300 with 30 and 100. And if he is, then the Yankees are a nightmare lineup wise because Rice and Grisham at the top of that lineup have been phenomenal. Grisham has 10 homers. Um, and now there's talk about Stanton coming back.
Yeah.
Which that is what it is. I don't know what he's got left in the tank, but and then the thing that I would fear most in that division is Aaron Boone is their manager. They're going to be ready to play, and uh, I just I don't know. I think we're looking at something we haven't seen before. Um, in him, what is it? 62 homers in 22. 37 in 106 games in 23, 58 last year with 144 RBIs. I mean, my goodness. Uh, he's putting up OPSs that are great months for a whole year. What, couple MVPs, rookie of the year. I mean,
I mean,
I remember,
there's legitimately like open wagers on sports books right now to bet on him. It's crazy odds to bat 400, which would
yeah,
be the first guy to
right.
do that in what, 70 years?
He's
So,
there now. He's at 400 now with a 491 on base percentage.
yeah, I mean, that's
The 400,
ridiculous.
it's just it could happen, obviously. I think it has to happen to a guy who plays a short season, who's hurt. Like George Brett in 1990 hit 388,
Yeah.
and he was right around 400 towards the end of the year, but he just barely qualified for the batting title. But that was the time when we were starting to see four relievers in a game, four power arms. You're facing a righty power guy every time, yada yada. Um, I'm kind of anxious to see from a strikeout perspective where he does. Because, like I said, this is a guy 208 punch outs, 152, 141, 158, 75, 171. Like I said, guys like that have a lot of trouble in October because the staffs and the arms you face can exploit it. So, um, but at the same time, I'm rooting for him. Seems like he's got a lot of Jeter in him. Not there, the stories in New York are about him, but not of him. He doesn't make them. He just says, I'm here. And I think the captaincy thing, um, he's a captain no matter what. And that he leads by example and he's phenomenal for the game too. Like in that market, there's so many guys I played against that if they would have been in that market would have been household names way beyond Vladimir Guerrero is a great example,
Yeah.
you know. So anyway, yeah, that's Aaron Judge. If you don't throw hard and you can't command the ball, don't pitch to him. It's really that simple. Um, but it's his age 33 season. I think we're seeing something special right now, and I mean, he hit 322 with 58 and 144 last year, which is why he went in the top four of fantasy drafts all year long. Um, but we could see a better season than that, which is
Insane.
it's ridiculous. It really is. But it's also a byproduct of fewer pitchers in the big leagues and so many more throwers. I was watching the College World Series today, Tennessee Vanderbilt, and I had acid reflux. They got two guys out there throwing mid upper 90s, just throwing the ball as hard as they could with
Just pitching machines.
zero command, zero command. And in my mind, I'm like, give me five bullpens with this guy, and he's a 25 game winner with throwing 5 miles an hour harder. But this whole love of velocity is catching up, and that's why we're seeing monstrously increased numbers on DL with pitchers, and that's not going to change because the infatuation with velocity is not going away. So. Anything else, big man?
Nope, nothing from me. Like I said, my main thing was wanting to talk about Rafi.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, no, I'm very curious to see how Alex plays this out because I think in my mind, the next thing from Breslow should have been, you know what, we handled this wrong. We shouldn't have, whatever. But it wasn't handled right by anybody, I don't think. Because again, why make that, play the game with the media before the game, play the game after, and then play the big game and then play the game after. You got to do that. This is just going to linger. And the media is going to make it last. So,
and nobody wants to
yep.
talk
All
about it.
right, so we're out of here till Sunday, Mother's Day. I'm not going to do a person tonight. Think I've gone on long enough, but Sunday we will have more. I think we're going to talk a lot about um, the arm and the body and injuries and stuff that I learned when I was hurt. Give you kind of an insight into why a lot of this stuff is happening and why guys who have Tommy John come back throwing harder than ever. Um, Met a couple kids, young, very talented kids at Belmont University the other day, who I'm anxious to follow and see how they do. But a couple of them coming back from Tommy John, which seems to be basically as common as sunrises nowadays with these kids. So yeah, that's it. We'll go be back on Sunday. Thank you for tuning in. Please like, subscribe, check us out. We're going to grow this thing into something fun and something special. Our production quality will eventually get really good. But right now, we're literally two dudes in a room talking baseball. See you Sunday, G.
Yep, I'll see you guys Sunday. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them as well. All right, thanks for listening.
Take care, guys.